So hello everyone, thanks for joining us today in our second edition of academic series. So we'll be interviewing Dr. Jose Miguel Tomasena. He was a PhD student in the communication department at Universitat Pompeu Fabra. He defended his thesis last November, just a couple months ago. Now he's working as an adjunct lecturer in the department, in the communication department at UPF, and he's also a research assistant at Universitat Oberta de Catalunya in the project called These Stories. And this project is about digital storytelling, social action, and creation of publics. So welcome, Dr. Jose Miguel, and thanks for accepting our invitation to join the second edition of this series. Would you like to add anything else to this introduction?
No,
Who is
I'm
Dr.
really,
Jose Miguel?
I'm really pleased to be here and to share my experience. And I'm also happy to be able to record this session and to upload it to my YouTube channel, because I have not published anything in English. There's like a sort of, it might be some interest for academics in other countries for my experience, and I'm happy to share it.
So we'll be talking about your research on BookTube and BookTubers. Can you tell us what is BookTube and what does it mean to be a BookTuber?
To put it on a very simple way, BookTubers are a type of YouTubers that use this social platform to share videos around books and around reading. It started around 2012, 2013 among very young readers. Some of them came from different fandoms, especially from Harry Potter fandoms and sort of horror fandoms like Stephen King, and also this Twilight fandom, this sort of young adult novels, vampire novels that were published in those years. And it started in the USA and in England, and then it quickly evolved and jumped to the Spanish speaking world. And so basically that's it. They are a type of YouTubers that talk about books.
So you did your research on them basically for your PhD. Can you tell us in detail what kind of methodology you use? Because it's kind of the most interesting part of your research. You become a booktuber yourself during this process. Can you tell us what kind of methodology you used, and maybe just it will be an example for other PhD students who are doing research on YouTube or in any other kind of digital environment?
Yes, I actually did my master's thesis also in Pompeu Fabra University about booktubers, and in my final paper, that was like sort of the research design for my ongoing project, I did not consider opening my own BookTube channel. I was planning to do digital ethnography, but sort of from an outsider point of view, just interviewing and observing and joining them in online networks, and also in offline places, no, in their production places and their meeting places. So that's what I planned. And then I started sort of my field work, and then I attended to Guadalajara's book fair in Mexico, my home country. And I started contacting my first booktubers. I had already been like watching their videos for like a whole year and analyzing them. So it was in some ways strange but interesting, because I had the sense that I already knew them, but I had not met them. So in that book fair, I started talking with some of them, and then I remember that I was chatting with some booktubers, and I told them that I was considering opening a channel, and they encouraged me to do it. So they told me, yes, just do it. It would be great. At the same time, I was also reading some theory about ethnography, particularly the book by Christine Hein that is called Ethnography for the Internet, where Christine Hein shared her own experience doing digital ethnography within groups of people that share used objects that they don't need. I can't remember the exact name of the group. Free Cycle, I think it's called. So in that book, she shares her experience, and then she theorizes how in the researching like digital groups or digital networks, it's increasingly difficult to get a sense of what the field is, because there's not exact place to go, no, in terms of the traditional ethnography. So she proposes using your own embodied experience like a departure point to build that. So that made a lot of sense for me, and both things happened at the same time. Meeting my first informants and then reading this. So that's why I decided to give it a try, to publish, to open a channel. And of course, I was sort of very scared, and I was freaking out at this, when I started, because I felt very embarrassed. But when I talked with my informants, they told me, yeah, that's exactly how we feel, and especially how we felt in the beginning. But then you get used to it, and then of course I got used to it. So I started like building bridges between what theory and what I was reading, and with my informants, and with my own experience. And I think that's actually the most interesting thing. And the other part is that I knew that I would be 3 or 4 years working on this, and I wanted to have a little bit of fun. No? I didn't be really bored just doing my PhD and studying and that so long. And so I needed like another, no, some emotion. So that's how I started.
So my next question is kind of related to how you like felt, you know, and how you felt before being a booktuber and how you felt after, and what kind of impressions you had about booktubers before becoming a booktuber, and how that did it affect your research. And some of the, just maybe one more question, what kind of impressions you had, and which of these impressions stayed or changed during you becoming a booktuber or your research?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's actually the whole point of doing ethnography all over, since the more traditional way of doing it. It's like using your own experience and your own subjectivity to build bridges and to understand others. So during this whole process, I was forced to face my own prejudices, no? My own preconceived ideas about what a booktuber is. And I have to sort of confess my own prejudices, because I have my own background. I am also a writer, and so I have my own points of view about what good books are, and about what bad books are, and about. So I must admit that I didn't quite like most of BookTube channels, because I did not connect with the type of books that they were vlogging about, and I also, in some cases, they talked about books in terms that seemed very superficial for me, for example, very impressionistic. So, but I soon realized that these were precisely my prejudices, and this was sort of the material that I should question and use as part of my research, and I immediately started knowing that I was wrong. No? That in many cases they were blogging about books that were really interesting, especially young adult books. And I started reading some of those books, and I was quite surprised. For example, I had not read Harry Potter, and I read the first 2 volumes because I wanted to understand and connect why this cultural world is so important for many of them. For example, in some BookTube meetings, they used like this classification of how Harry Potter's houses to classify where they belong. No, for example, I'm from Slytherin, and I'm from this house, and I didn't understand what was happening because I had not read Harry Potter, and so I read it, and I found that the books are great, and I also read other things. Març is telling that the Slytherin rules, and I had not even seen the movies because it seemed to it didn't interest me quite because I was in other areas. So I quickly started to understand that I was completely wrong, and that there were many things that I was missing, and at the same time, I started to understand that I had not to connect with everybody. That BookTube was a very diverse group. And actually, I also started to question if it was actually a group, because one of the category used in this in social media, I don't know, platforms is the term of community, and also in terms of research. And I started to question this concept. I don't know if BookTube is a community, because we do not all share the same values, we do not all share the same tastes, and we don't agree necessarily, and there are stronger disputes within it. So what I started to question from my experience is that I connected with the people that read the type of books that I liked, and when I started building a community around my own channel, the people that came to me and that commented on my videos also share the same affinities with me. So I started becoming closer to a concept by James Paul Gee, another scholar that has worked with video games mainly and literacy. But he talks about affinity spaces. So these groups are not necessarily communities. They are affinity spaces. So you connect with those who have something in common with you, and you don't connect with others who don't. So I started thinking about how sociality is structured within BookTube, and that happened actually because I had these troubles and these questions that I had to ask myself all the time.
You actually kind of answered my next question, but if you want to go more in detail, so there's been an insider and outsider in the field or in the community you are doing research on. No, it's a never-ending and very relevant discussion in academia. So you are a writer yourself, you're a booktuber, and you're a researcher doing research on BookTube. What kind of negotiations of positions and reflexivity you had during the data collection and data analysis? Not only the analysis maybe, but during the data collection too. You probably had to negotiate a lot of positions. Like you mentioned, you are a writer and you had this idea of good literature and bad literature. So maybe if you want to answer more in detail, insider, outsider discussion.
Yeah. Regarding the discussion about good literature or bad literature, or good books or bad books, good taste and bad taste, high culture and low culture, legitimized culture and popular culture, all these discussions were in some ways the kind of topics that I was always facing. But I decided that that was not the issue in my research. No? I was not discussing the type of books, and I was not qualified to discuss those books in those terms, and that is in some ways a counterpoint to the literary field. The literary fields, and I here started using the work of Pierre Bourdieu, the French sociologist who studied the cultural fields. He described that the whole literary system is built on the discussion about aesthetic qualities, about books, about culture. So that's why writers and critics are always fighting around what is good literature and bad literature. So I had to put these discussions aside and put my own prejudices aside, and to understand the social world of booktubers in a deeper level. No? Why are these guys so popular? How do they build this community? How do the audience see them? So I started to work on that, and it actually popped one time and another in my research, but I had to put that on a side for a moment. I don't know if I have answered the question, but you
Yes.
can ask me more.
So you mentioned that you were reflecting on if the BookTube is a community and there were some disputes. What are these disputes? Like what kind of conflicts they have in the BookTube community?
There are different types of conflicts. There's a level that is built on the most basic human conflicts, about friendships, about love, and whatever. For example, some of them very young booktubers started in Mexico when they were teenagers. They were still in high school, or others were starting their first years in college. And of course, the things that they were living were related to that that age. No? For example, they started to connect with other booktubers from other countries and from other cities, and they started building friendships. And then some of these friendships broke apart. Some of them fell in love and then broke apart. So there's like a human component of that. And so there's a lot of, they say, like booktube gossip, like chismes de booktube, that are continuously popping up in the videos and the communities. So it's I have not gone deeply on that, because some followers and some fans of these booktubers are like exchanging comments about if someone is still friend with the other one. That's one level, and then there are other deeper levels. I have found that there are two crucial conflicts. One is their relationship with publishers. Some publishers started giving them free books in exchange of reviews and sort of visibility. So, and some booktubers published videos accusing these other booktubers of like selling out, no? Like one of them published a famous video calling them prostitubers, like accusing them of faking love and passion for money. It was and so there were like bigger disputes about it. So that's one issue that is continuously discussed. And the other issue is related to their motivations and what happens when popularity increases. So that's that became one of my main focus of research. I was coming from this concept of participatory culture by Henry Jenkins, a very optimistic point of view. But I started to see conflicts between these like motivations, participatory motivations, and others that were related to online fame and to online exposure. And some of these booktubers, a few of them, but are highly popular and highly they have a very strong communities that really love them. I have seen teenagers screaming in book fairs for a certain booktuber as if he was a Beatle or a pop star. No? And I saw this guy who is from Monterrey, like waving to his followers, and these teenagers crying. No? So there are really strong motivations there. So what I have found is that when the popularity increases, these booktubers like tend to live or experience a pressure to live in this like micro celebrities cultural world, while others remain with a more community-based practices. So that's another conflict. And the limit of that conflict is expressed when some of them are accused of not being a real booktuber, because some of them started like doing other like YouTube genres like reactions or challenges, or even they did this sort of video genre that it's all over YouTube, like tasting candies from another countries, no, for example, or challenges or tags, or these kind of videos that were related to other kinds of YouTubers. So some of them accuse them of betraying the real passion for books because they just wanted more views and more subscribers and those kind of things.
Thank you. And by the way, the participants can just join in, unmute themselves, and ask questions. I'm sure there are a lot of burning questions, so please join in and involve in the conversation. And Mar just wrote a comment. There's a whole discussion on the notion of authenticity when they become bigger.
Yes, of course. That's one of the main issues, and of course one thing that have worked is the notion of connectivity as the commerce of connectivity, connectivity as a how do you say mercancía? I forgot the word. Excuse me. Commodity, exactly. Thank you, Mar. Yeah, yeah. Popularity markers, and in terms of views and in terms of subscribers, sort of a commodity that is transferred, that is negotiated, that is sold. And of course, there are disputes about it. So, for example, it's really interesting how they negotiate, for example, cross appearance in their channels. No? If someone who has a big audience wants to help a booktuber he or she likes, he invites him to appear on his channel as in a featuring. No? That's a media strategy that is all used in pop culture, especially in music, no? With all these featurings. We have an artist that invites another one. So in YouTube, it's spread all over. What this makes is that it transfers popularity and subscribers from one channel to another if they are exposed to different audiences. So that's how they have built big audiences. And of course, this is a strategy used for example, in esports and video game crews. No? For example, famous gamers invite other friends, so they start like helping each other to grow their audiences. And there are strong negotiations there also, because the less popular sometimes accuse big booktubers that they are like they feel like too much, and they feel like they have lost ground, and they feel like they don't mix with the low subscribe booktube. And the other ones tend to suspect that they are always trying to use them just to increase their number. So there are these like symbolic battles all over all the time.
And where are you in these conflicts? As a booktuber, what kind of strategies did you have on YouTube to maybe gain more followers even? I'm asking you not as a researcher, but as a booktuber. I just wonder.
I actually gained a great amount of subscribers when I appeared on a video by a Peruvian booktuber called Este Bicho. When I went to Peru and I recorded something with him, and that's the time that I experienced that. I wanted to do that because I wanted to also to experience how that works. And in the interviews, for example, a Spanish booktuber told me that he grew really fast just because Fa Orozco, the most popular booktuber in Mexico, the queen of booktube, mentioned him as one of his favorite booktube channels on a video. He said it was crazy. No, this girl just mentioned me, and I started receiving thousands of followers just because she said so. So it's really interesting how this influence is built. And even when BookTube is a small niche of YouTube compared to other mainstream genres, it's really interesting to see it as a case where you can study how these power dynamics work, and how they are built. That's why I think that my story is just a case that allows us to understand on wider terms how participatory culture are mixed with all these with this power and economic systems that are building online popularity and online celebrity.
Speaking of the participatory culture, Joel has a question. Is the participatory culture among booktuber affinity space active or passive?
I don't quite understand, Joel, the distinction between active or passive. I don't know if you can expand it a little bit more about it in the comment sections, but I don't know.
Okay, Joel
I can understand.
can't speak because he's in the library, but he's probably writing an explanation now. In the meantime, Ona has a question. She says, "Hi, are booktubers moving to Twitch? I'm researching YouTubers, gamers, and many of them are going to Twitch and using YouTube mainly as a repository. But maybe with booktubers, Twitch is not a useful tool for engaging with their audience. I was just wondering if this landscape was changing too."
Yes, it is changing some of them are moving to Twitch. Some of them are also moving to TikTok. Some of them are moving to Instagram. There's like a heavy movement of bookstagrammers. And I think it's because it's easier to edit and to process to produce. No, there's not a lot of work in terms of editing. That it's the most the most challenging part in terms of technical abilities that booktubers have to learn. So it's very immediate to do a live streaming, and I think that's a tendency in all the platforms. And I also have experienced that how YouTube is as a platform is also adapting to that and offering creators other facilities that Twitch and other platforms are giving them. Exactly, they are building a lot of facilities for YouTubers to transmit live on the platform. I have not used live, but I will do a live next week because I also want to try it. And they are also introducing this sort of super chat monetization schemes where followers pay directly to the creator. So YouTube is also changing because the whole ecosystem is changing really fast. And I have also found that the booktubers feel in a very weak position against the platform because it's always changing the way its algorithm and the search engines are working. So they feel like they are building like a personal brand or a online presence and they don't have full control of it. So they are like diversifying in the platforms where they are moving. And I also another trend I just want to comment it quickly. I have found that some of them are moving to this Patreon and subscription models and building big like book clubs. So they are, for example, starting to read with their fans a single book and coming it on private meetings through Zoom and other platforms. And of course, this trend has coincided with the pandemic crisis. So they are like sort of moving and building other business models and other ways to engage.
Okay, Joel had an explanation saying that passive in a sense that if there is a live participation or just an on-demand, and then he just said, you just answered my question.
Okay, yes, this started like a asynchronous conversation and it's moving to different levels. And I know Joel is also interested in podcast. Another trend is that some of them are moving also to the podcast wave. So I think we should start seeing these things more as a transmedia lens and cross-platform brands or personal brands in wider terms.
Mm-hmm. I have a question too. I'm going to focus more on your YouTube part. About your dedication to YouTube during the thesis and now and wherever, but how many hours are you dedicating to your channel now?
Currently, 0. I haven't uploaded a video in like a month.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the big issues here. And I'm experiencing right now some of the things that have happened to other booktubers is that there's always like a tension between what you want to do and what the platform in some ways encourages you to do. Because it's clear that algorithms and search engines give a better place to content creators that are constantly uploading things. In terms of a business model, the machine works and encourages you to upload a lot of content and to be constantly producing. That's why big YouTubers in general and booktubers in particular tend to produce a lot of things and produce a lot of videos, because the more you produce, the more chances are that you can get better numbers, increase your viewing time, and be better placed on the whole ecosystem. And of course, YouTube profits from that, because it's proactively promoting content creators to upload things. That's a big machine that is working there, but it's in constant conflict with ordinary lives. So what I have found is that a lot of booktubers, when they grew up and when they were on their last years of college and when they started working and being less dependent on their parents, that maybe when they were younger supported them and bought them books and whatever, they start struggling. So that's why many booktubers have abandoned their channel or moved to other platforms quicker to use or easier. And just a few of them have been able to remain this on a professional level. I must say that from my my sort of research directory, I have identified like almost 500 channels, BookTube channels, and only about 20% of them or less are profitable on a low level. You need to have a lot of numbers to start to participate on YouTube's economy, and just a few of them are able to do that. Most of them are out of the economic revenue systems. They simply don't. So a lot of them have quit and have, and the same. I'm experiencing actually the same, because I would love to upload more videos. I want to upload more videos, but I have a lot of work, and I have to teach, and I have to research, and I have to take care of my kids, and I have to do a lot of things. So I don't have time, and no one is paying me for this. So what happens is that it's and the effect this has is on a long term is that it polarizes the type of creators that are able to live from these platforms and to have a decent life, and the majority of content creators do not make it. So it's like a big space for precarity and for exploitation. There are a lot of scholars that have been researching in this line. I especially like the work of Remedios Zafra, who is a Spanish essayist, feminist scholar that has been working on this, on the notion of how your enthusiasm for doing passionate things enables others to profit and to exploit you, and how you auto-exploit yourself through this participation. So.
We have another question from Karen. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. I have a similar question. I'm wondering if you have ever felt tensions or any conflicts between your job as an emerging academic and your evolving role as a booktuber, with all the things that that implies. If yes, how do you manage them?
I manage them as I can. I don't know exactly, but of course I feel this conflict, because basically my time is limited, and I don't have enough time to do all the things that I want to do. And in the long term, I aspire to be a writer. No? That's what I wanted. If I had to choose, I would choose to write novels. That's what I want to do in the long term, but I don't have to do so. I started a PhD to become an academic, to become a professor, to get paid better, to do my work, the same type of work that I was doing in Mexico, teaching basically. And of course I like it, but my long-term how to say, vocation, or what I really want is to write. So I have to fight for time for that, and then in some ways also opened this door of having a presence in YouTube that has given me a lot of things, and I don't want to quit, because I am also seeing that the way the publishing business and the publishing field is evolving. It's really valuable, these things, and I have actually worked and studied that, how booktubers relate to the publishing field, and how this connectivity, this sort of social capital that we accumulate in social media is highly valuable for publishers, because the book industry publishes a lot of books and is not fast enough to promote them. So we are all like flooded with great books and a few time to read it. To read them.
And I also have another question. Do you have a booktuber reference or reference?
In terms of, I don't know if I am understanding the booktubers that I like.
Yeah.
Follow
for you as a booktuber, as a researcher, yeah, as a reader.
Yeah, there are many YouTubers booktubers that I really liked. For example, I admire Fa Orozco. She's the queen of booktube. She's really she's really great, and she has been a very generous person in terms of what I have heard. I have not been able to interview her, but she's great, and I really love what there's like a collective of feminist booktubers in Mexico called Libros Before Tipos. There are like 14 or 15 booktubers, this collective, and I really like what they do. I actually published a video with them in my channel, sort of interview. You can look at it. I also like a lot a channel that it's called Teoría del Caos, but he actually quit because he had the same problem. He started working and in the publishing industry, and he doesn't have time to edit, because he did a more sophisticated type of videos. He did like sort of video essays that are more complicated in terms of editing, and I really like that channel. And then I watch a lot of music videos and a lot of movies channels and essays and other things, not necessarily, and also guitar tutorials and another thing. I watch a lot of music nerdy things.
Okay.
So I have a question that is like related to these profiles of booktubers. So you mentioned that they are mostly young people, and if they have a job, they usually don't have time to, like, they quit basically their booktube channels. So what kind of profiles that you have encountered, except being young or student? Have you encountered any other booktuber like yourself, a writer or an editor?
No, that's changing. I must say that this has evolved a lot, and I'm sort of a part of a wave of old people that started doing booktube. Yes, there are many channels from people from different ages. I think at this moment it's really inaccurate to say that it's like a very phenomenon. I think it has spread and it has changed, and actually many publishing houses and booksellers are starting their channels and are using video on Instagram and other things to work. For example, my book my bookseller, my dealer here in Poblenou in Barcelona, he has a bookshop called No You, and he publishes, transmits a live streaming every morning at 9:30. It's called España necesita tu opinión de mierda. He starts every morning with this song from Los Puncetes, like a Spanish band, and he starts talking about whatever he wants and talking about books, and he does that every morning. And that's new. Actually, the pandemic forced him to do that. And I have also found that many profiles from established publishing houses are increasingly using this sort of channels, like in terms of promotion and their marketing efforts.
And so you did research on Spanish-speaking booktubers, so from different countries, right? Like from many countries in Latin America and Spain. Did you see any differences among the countries, or it was just there were no differences, or it was just a community of Spanish-speaking countries?
There are differences, but I must say that. But I have not gone deeply about it, because my interest was not like sort of profiling or building like national comparisons. I have found that the trends are global in terms of, for example, of genres. Basically, and I actually built a whole chapter of my thesis about it. Basically, in terms of audiovisual production, YouTubers are like working on genres that come from other YouTubers, like, for example, challenges, tags, reactions, reviews. No? In the case of reviews, I must correct myself. Other genres that don't come from YouTube, that come from television, and that in some cases come from radio, and that are really old. For example, the review is a genre that was not invented in YouTube. It has a very long history. So what they did is like building and adapting those generic sort of those genres to the theme of books and reading. It's sort of a thematic adaptation, but it does not. They have not like built something completely new. No? It's like an evolution of that. But compared to traditional literary criticism, because we are saying the media subject is like a common reader. It's not like an academic, an expert, or someone who has studied a lot about literature. So they are always talk about the right for ordinary readers to talk about what they love about. That's like a wider cultural trend, no? For example, we can see that in consumption. Even when you are trying to buy something, you go on Amazon or on another online retailer, and you look for the consumers' reviews. So we tend to distrust the producers, and we want like ordinary people's opinion about something. No? So it's like a wider trend. So they are saying, no, we are ordinary readers, and we don't need to have a PhD in anything to talk about what we love.
And is there any other question from the audience? If not, I will continue with my own questions. I could just unmute yourselves and join the conversation. Don't be shy. It's a safe space. So I have another question. This is a discussion in ethnographic studies too. Like, how do we find participants? How do we approach them? So you had a lot of participants. Was it easy to find participants because you were a booktuber? Or like, how did it happen? How did you meet your participants? How did you like include them in your research?
It's a good question. In the beginning, I thought that my YouTube channel would open like a space to meet other booktubers, and that did not happen. What I started noticing is that they didn't care about what I was publishing. I met most of them in book fairs and sometimes commenting on their videos, not expecting them to come to my space, and interacting with them online, and that's one strategy. Then I did a short and simple survey that was distributed on their networks, just with basic questions about how long have you been publishing videos, how often do you do it, and those sort of things. And at the end of that survey, there was a question saying if they wanted to be contacted for an interview. And most of them answered that they were interested. So that survey helped me a lot to build like the first bridge. And after that, I emailed them and started connecting them. But that's the way it happened. And the other thing is that in all ethnographies, some informants referred me to another one, like in this snowball metaphor that has been used a lot of times. No? So when someone trusted me after some of the interviews and whatever, they referred me to another one. And that's how I build them. And the BookTube channel remained like a space for me, like building through empathy and through like embodied experience that I could use like a bridge to understand. You know? But it wasn't, and that's something that caused me like a little crisis, because I thought that we would interact through my channel. And I actually, on my first videos, I used to talk to them, to the camera directly, and ask booktubers questions, but nobody answered. And then I sort of came into a crisis, and I published a video about asking openly, how do you see me? And then another person that was not a booktuber and had not anything to do with that gave me an answer, and he advised me to say, if you are expecting to connect with them directly, you won't connect with all of them. You have to learn by analogy, he told me. And that was learned. You have to experience yourself what does it mean to build an audience and to build trust with your own community. And that's exactly the same process that they have been living with their own community, but it's not exactly the same. And it's also related to the thing about community that we were talking about. It's not a community. I will not connect with all of them, and of course I will not connect with their audiences. They are, in some cases, when they are compatible, and they are like affinity spaces, and so those subscribers and followers and commenters can be transferred, and it works. But if not, it's not the way this kind of sociality works.
Okay, thank you. Maybe Tucci's the connection is gone, but I don't know.
Yeah, it might be possible I lost her.
Yeah, I have another question for you. Let me check, because I have right here. What is your recommendation as a super booktuber for someone who wants to start one channel or something with YouTube?
I don't know in which terms. It depends on how. So in terms of academics, I understand that we are talking to academics. What I would encourage is to have like a participatory approach and to actually do what your informants are doing. This is not new. For example, before I used YouTube, there were researchers that studying YouTube that used YouTube. And before that, there were like media researchers studying blogs, no, written blogs, that opened a blog to engage with others. And before that, there were like researchers that were researching, I don't know, online photography and online communities of photographers in Flickr or in that opened their own profile and uploaded their own photos. It's part of the way it has always worked for digital ethnography. So in terms of in your case, for example, I know that you're researching video games, so I encourage you to use your own experience as a gamer and using your own online and offline interactions and your own your own experience, embodied experience, to build like bridges to understand others. That's how I translate the I know in the long term the ethnographic paradigm of researching. It's like embracing your own subjectivity and your own experience as a way of learning. And of course, it's not enough because ethnography or autoethnography is not about talking about yourself or describing what you do. Just like using your own experience as a departure to understand others. That's how I understand it.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I got kicked out because of my internet, but you continue. That's good. So are there any other questions from the audience? Any other questions? So maybe you can mention your recent research. Do you continue working on BookTube, or do you do other research that is connected somehow?
I'm actually at the moment in the process of publishing the results of my research in journals and papers in this process of talk. Another advice I can give you for ongoing PhD students is to start doing that before your final submission, because the timing is really slow, and after that it's good to finish your PhD with a small but decent publishing record, and I did not do that, and also use the COFRE resources, the money that it's put there to translation and to correction for papers. I did not use it all the time, and it was a mistake. And now I would love to use that money that was there for me, and so I'm publishing that, and I'm starting to expand to different areas. I like have three areas or three directions in which my research could expand, and I don't know which direction it will go. The first one is in terms of education and media literacy, the application of BookTube to ongoing formal and informal learning spaces. It has been important for me. I have been invited by Portugal's National Reading Plan to work as an external advisor for a specific project about writing and reading practices for teenagers. So it has been a surprise and a very nice experience to expand this dimension of my research that was not originally grounded on media literacy to that field, and it's great. The other one is I would also like to expand this to other reading practices, to other online reading practices, sort of like what we were just talking about, what's happening on Bookstagram, what's happening on Goodreads, that it's a social network for readers, what's happening on Wattpad with the fan fiction writing and those kind of things, and of course what's happening with the live streaming scene that it's growing increasingly important in Twitch and in other, and in YouTube also, no? Because YouTube is also changing. So that's another. And the third area is to expand to other comparative studies in YouTube, to other thematic areas in YouTube, or to other areas of YouTubers and other type of content creators. That's fascinating. I'm in some ways like really a YouTube nerd. I'm fascinated with the platform, with its complexities, its debates, and how it works in different terms. So I think I could be I could become a whole life YouTube nerd.
Maybe you would like to give some advice to the PhD students, except publishing or like COFRE, but like maybe about methodology or theoretical framework that usually like when we start our PhD projects, we struggle with a lot of questions. No? We have to navigate many things in the project about methodology, theoretical framework, analysis. Are there any advice that you can give as an ex-PhD student in the department?
Yes, recapturing. Use the COFRE to go to academic meetings and to do that. Publish if you want. Work with co-authors and with others to do that. And embrace like a participatory approach to your research. That's something I was also telling before. Whatever you are studying, try to get an insider point of view and to put yourself on an insider position. It's really rich. It's more fun also, I think. And we should all have fun while we are working these things, because it's hard. And another advice that Noemi Lugo gave me when I was starting my PhD is if you're coming with a master degree where you have worked on the same theme, or you have already worked on the design of your research, start your field work as soon as possible. Don't overthink what you are going to do, because you have already, if you're coming, in my case, I came from the master degree. I already have read and watched a lot of things during 1 year. So I was, even when I was not theoretically and methodologically on a perfect shape, that's impossible, I was pretty ready to do that. So he told me, just do it. Start quickly your field work, and during your field work, you will still be reading other things, and so you will be jumping from empiric work and data to theoretical time, and that makes the whole process richer.
Okay, are there any other questions from the audience? Maybe we can finish with one question. Julia, Joel, Ona, Karen.
I don't have any more questions.
Maybe we can end one last question that I have. Mostly like this is the conversation now in every talk I've seen. How did the pandemic affect your research? And you were actually in your last year during the when the pandemic started, right? So how did it affect? I mean, you were writing, but still, I'm sure there were a lot of issues due to the pandemic.
Yeah, the main issue was psychological. I had almost finished my PhD thesis, but I still had to write like 1.5 chapters and the introduction and the conclusions. That's so. In terms of words, it was most of the work was already done. So the difficulties was a generalized difficulty that I was living with my family, with my kids here, and I have small kids, and they need a lot of attention, and we were like in a very tense environment, and I was also teaching classes, so it was like a lot of work and a lot of stress during the pandemic. So when I submitted my research paper, my dissertation, I sort of felt free, no? And that was before summer. So after that, I felt already free. But yes, those moments were hard. I mean, they were not different as many others. This kind of situations happens to every person, to everybody, no? It's not, and I was not in the middle of like a field work or whatever. Julia can share that experience because that she was on a very different situation that changed completely the logic about her research project. But in my case, it was almost finished.
Yeah, the big issue was the field work. As you said, the first years are key to do the research field and forget about it, and then dedicated time to analyze and write, because I think the most important part is field work and do it with time, with patience, and yeah. But whatever, COVID also is, I think, a mental factor that we have to take into account for our concentration and our time in home. Every time are in home, and I think this is complicated.
Yeah.
But yes.
Okay, maybe we can finish here if there is no other question. Thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you Dr. Jose Miguel Tomesana for accepting our invitation and sharing your valuable insight into PhD, into research on YouTube and BookTube. It was great. It was great to hear. And that's it from my side.
Yeah, thank you very much.